Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Thursday. It's September 4th, 2025. Hope you're having a great Thursday here on the EWTN radio network. We've got a great show lined up for you yet again. We have the one, the only, Father Mitch Pacwa joining us for our Thursday Cultural Connections, and we are going to dive into that very deep and large brain of Father Mitch's and talk about canonizations. What do they mean? How do they come about? I mean, obviously, in two segments, we don't have enough time to go into all that much detail, but just to kind of get you along the lines of thinking about the canonizations coming up this weekend of Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis, in terms of a little bit about the process and what this says about who these young men were and who they are in our world today. So we'll talk about that with Father Mitch. And then speaking of the saints, Carlo Acutis, we have the amazing artist and sculptor Timothy Schmalz with us. He's from Canada, and he already has a brand new, newly unveiled statue of Carlo Acutis in Assisi at St. Mary Major. He is going to tell us about that. But then if you go to his website, which is just beautiful, there's a video that he did. He's speaking in the video, first person, describing how he comes about with the idea. Like, what does he look for? How does he pray? How does he decide what he's going to show and exhibit in these beautiful pieces? So he has one there that was just unveiled in August, and he's working, well, at least this video was done back in February. There's two more. I'm not sure when those other two of Carlo are actually going to be placed in Assisi or if they're already there, because remember, we just got back on Sunday and haven't had a chance to go up there. But I cannot wait to talk to him about these statues because they are just breathtakingly beautiful and they're so lifelike. So I think you're going to enjoy the conversation with Timothy Schmall, sculptor and artist, regarding the new statues of soon-to-be Saint Carlo Acutis. So that's our show for the first hour. Again, Father Mitch Pacwa coming up, and then Timothy Schmalz. And again, check out his website. Just Google Timothy Schmalz. There's also a number of, in addition to his website, there's a number of videos, number of articles about his great work. So I think you'll find that super encouraging, inspiring, and interesting. Let's see if the weather is going to inspire us at all, what it's going to be like. It's a beautiful time of year. September is a gorgeous month. However, we still have some heat issues and also some rainfall in different parts of the country. So we have a significant late season heat wave that continues in the interior Northwest, Pacific Northwest, for at least one more day before easing somewhat Friday into Saturday. There's a combination also of heavy rains, heavy moisture, tropical moisture ahead of Tropical Cyclone Lorena, which will bring a marginal to slight risk of excessive rainfall across the southwest U.S., and that is through Saturday, and they say it also could bring areas of flooding. So that's the latest on the forecast. It is a Thursday morning, September 4th, the first full week of September. Great to be with you here on EWTN's Global Catholic Radio. Let's get started with the news on a Thursday right here on EWTN. In his catechesis at the general audience yesterday, the Holy Father focusing on the Lord's final words on the cross, "I thirst and it is finished," according to the Gospel of John. As he hung upon the cross and humanity faced our most luminous yet darkest moment, the Pope said, Jesus spoke those two sentences filled with an entire lifetime, which reveal the entire existence of the Son of God. Jesus appears on the cross as a supplicant for love, not as a victorious hero, he said. He humbly asked for what he alone cannot give to himself in any way. The Pope pointed out that Jesus' thirst on the cross was not only the physiological need of a tortured body, but also an expression of a profound desire, that of love, of relationship, and of communion. Vice President Vance finished yesterday with his visit to Minneapolis. He traveled to the city Wednesday, a week after the mass shooting at Annunciation Catholic Church, visiting the site and meeting with parents of the victims.
A lot of things have happened to me since I've become the Vice President of the United States. I have never had a day that will stay with me like this day did, because I really felt like these parents, in the midst of the worst grief of their entire lives, they opened up their lives and they opened up their hearts and they made me part of it.
Vance also saying the trip served as a reminder to be the best father he could be.
One of the ways that I'm going to try to honor these parents and the children that they lost is by being a better dad and hugging my kids tight tonight and making sure that they know that their dad loves them.
Vance and his wife Usha laid flowers near the front steps of the church and paused to read messages written in chalk on the pavement. He also met in private with, as he mentioned, some of the victims' family members. The New York Post, meanwhile, this morning is reporting that the deranged Minnesota gunman Robert Westman blamed his mother for his decision to kill so many people at a Catholic school after she warned him, he said, that he would regret transitioning to female. While on the next slide of his manifesto, he also discouraged people from letting their kids change gender. In the disturbed letter, the 23-year-old claimed to be anxious about a visit from his mom in an entry dated July 1st, where he recalled her many concerns about him transitioning. In his manifesto, he also appeared to blame the transitioning and smoking marijuana for his violence. The letters were transcribed by the New York Post, and he added, "I wish I never tried experimenting with either." He added, "Don't let your kids smoke weed or change gender until they are like 17. Westman legally changed his first name from Robert to Robin when he was 17 years old to reflect his desire to present himself as a woman. He worked for a marijuana dispensary earlier this year, but was not working there when he carried out the attack on August 27th. Families of the victims of a 2023 mass shooting in Maine, as well as survivors, are filing a negligence lawsuit against the U.S. government. At a news conference yesterday, attorney for the families, Ben Gideon, saying the government back in 2023 failed to act on warning signs shown by Army reservist Robert Card before he killed 18 people in a shooting spree.
The Army knew that Robert Card, the shooter, was suffering from severe mental health crises and had violent ideations.
The shooting setting off a 2-day manhunt that ended when Card died by suicide. Now approximately 100 plaintiffs allege the military, the Biden administration's Department of Defense, and others in the government at the time 2 years ago failed to respond to warning signs and a threat by the gunman. That lawsuit also seeking monetary damages for pain and suffering, medical and funeral expenses, emotional distress, and more. Mark Mayfield tells us Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Trump administration will continue targeting vessels believed to be carrying drugs to the United States.
At a press conference in Mexico City Wednesday, Rubio spoke about the recent strike on a boat in the Caribbean Sea that reportedly killed 11 people, saying it'll happen again. Rubio said the president opted not to stop the vessel and instead ordered it to be destroyed because it posed an immediate threat to the U.S. Rubio was in the Mexican capital Wednesday to meet with the country's president, Claudia Sheinbaum. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry says he wants National Guardsmen to be sent to New Orleans as a way to crack down on crime. President Trump says he's open to the idea, telling reporters in the Oval Office yesterday it would take 2 weeks and would be easier than D.C. New Orleans City Council President J.P. Morrell calling the idea ridiculous, while the council vice president said it was nothing more than a scare tactic. Illegal immigrants are going to be housed, meanwhile, at Louisiana's largest maximum security prison in Angola. The section will be dubbed Camp 47 after President Trump, whose administration has been expanding the number of ICE raids. The detainees who are expected to be housed there are described as the worst of the worst criminal illegal immigrants. The state's detention facilities previously held Mahmoud Khalil, who organized a pro-Palestinian protest at Columbia University. President Trump thinks the U.S. will avoid a government shutdown. The annual spending battle underway in Congress to avoid a shutdown on September 30th. And speaking from the Oval Office yesterday, he said he's confident all Republicans will vote yes on at least a temporary spending bill, while the larger budget gets itself worked out.
I think the Republicans will vote for an extension. We won't have any Democrat votes.
The president also went on to say, in his opinion, the Democrats will never support any measure of his, no matter how it may help Americans.
We could give the greatest budget ever. Tax cut of 50%, everybody taken care of, perfect for women, perfect for men, perfect for minorities, perfect for everything, and we wouldn't get one vote for the Democrats because they've lost their mind. They are so deranged. They have Trump derangement syndrome.
And the governor of Illinois says the president is planning to send Texas National Guard troops to Chicago. Senator John Cornyn of Texas was asked about that decision.
If it's necessary, I support the National Guard assisting local law enforcement.
But now there are questions about whether this will actually happen. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker would not say where or when he received the tip, and a spokesperson for Texas Governor Greg Abbott says there are no current plans to send Texas troops to another state. Chris Carrasco tells us one of the president's potential picks to chair the central bank is calling for interest rate cuts.
During an interview, Christopher Waller raised concerns about how quickly the weakening job market could fall apart if the Fed doesn't cut rates at its upcoming September policy meeting. Waller, who was appointed to the Fed by Trump during his first term, is among roughly a dozen potential candidates to succeed current Chairman Jerome Powell. Waller won points with Trump and his top advisors, as he has been less concerned about the threat of tariff-driven inflation. I'm Chris Coraggio.
President Trump asking the high court to quickly hear an appeal on his tariffs after a lower court ruled that most of them are illegal. A federal appeals court ruling last week that Trump had exceeded his authority imposing steep levies on nearly every country. According to the filings, Trump is asking Supreme Court justices to hear arguments on the case in early November. The lower court's ruling allowed the tariffs to remain in effect until at least October 14th. Wildfires linked to lightning strikes are rapidly spreading across Northern California. Over 10,000 strikes recorded just on Tuesday.
Have that go bag. Have your pets, leashes and collars near the door. Have your crates ready. Have your documentation. It's so important, and it's really easy to do.
That's some advice from Kimberly Nealon, who's been evacuated from her home. One fire is threatening homes in the historic town of Chinese Camp. Another is prompting evacuations in the Sierra foothills, especially in the Calaveras and Tulum counties. CAL FIRE has combined several fires into the TCU September Lightning Complex, which has burned over 12,000 acres. While the immediate lightning threat has lessened, the risk of new fires from previous strikes remain. And CAL FIRE officials warn that fires can start suddenly or even weeks later, especially in forested areas. More than 30 fires are currently active in the state of California. And Larry Kofsky tells us victims of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein speaking out as a first batch of documents related to the case are being released this week.
Speaking on Capitol Hill, survivors, including Lisa Phillips, said they know the names of those who were regulars in Epstein's world.
Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names.
The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee gave the okay for 33,000 pages of information related to Epstein to be made public, and President Trump thinks that's enough.
Because I think we should talk about the greatness of our country and the success that we're having.
The documents include video from the area outside Epstein's jail cell in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York prior to his suicide in 2019. I'm Larry Kofsky, NBC News Radio.
A federal judge in Texas today considering whether to accept a new plea agreement that would allow Boeing to avoid prosecution over two deadly crashes involving its 737 MAX jetliner. Tom Costello explains a judge rejecting an earlier plea deal last year.
Now the new Trump DOJ plea agreement drops the felony charge, but Boeing would pay $1.1 billion in fines and compensation to victims' families. The Justice Department says 110 family members approve of the deal.
But many of the families want to see Boeing face criminal prosecution. A few will get one last chance to address a judge at today's hearing. Federal prosecutors had charged Boeing with deceiving FAA regulators about new cockpit software linked to the fatal crashes in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019 that killed 346 people. It is a Thursday. It's September 4th. Thank you so much for tuning in to Catholic Connection here on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. Coming up, Cultural Connections on Catholic Connection with the one, the only, Father Mitch Pacwa. We'll talk canonizations up next. Welcome back. Catholic Connection is a Thursday morning. That means, of course, Father Mitch Pacwa, who joins us every week for what we call our Cultural Connection segments. So we are going to address the canonizations, just get Father's insights. But first, Father, you're chomping at the bit to comment about some of these politicians and their ridiculous statements about prayer. Thanks for joining us this morning. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday to you, too. Last week, was really disturbing. We had this whole attempt to say that the horrible killing by this person that shot through a window of a church at little children, killed 2, and wounded other children and adults. This was something that, beginning with the mayor of Minneapolis, saying that prayers and thoughts are not enough. We're tired of that, and they want to see something else. And then a chorus going on to the governor of California and news commentators. And at the same time, they ignored the fact that 2 years ago, the governor of Minnesota was approached by letter by officials from the Catholic school system to act for more protection of the private schools. And they did nothing. And then they're saying that our prayers and I don't find my thoughts do much except to help pull this into perspective. But praying, especially at a time when people have just died and others are in the hospital, what can I do for the people in the hospital, since I'm not a physician, except pray for them? And what can I do for the souls of the children that died, except pray for their souls and for their families? There's nothing they could do. And when they, as politicians, and he's the mayor of Minneapolis, and the governor is, doing all his other stuff, running for vice president and all that, but doesn't respond to a direct request for protection of Catholic schools and private schools. And then they say that prayer is useless. No, I don't think that it's prayer that's useless. It's these politicians. What did they do? They're the ones in charge of the police and protection. And the shame of them doing nothing and then criticizing people who prayed, who didn't have the authority. This is something that, if I were voting, I would call for, citizens to reflect on up in Minnesota.
Don't you think it was a big case of projection and deflection? They wanted to deflect away from the fact that the politicians didn't do it. They took care of all the public schools, but they rejected. There was the Minnesota Catholic Conference, the Archbishop himself, Archbishop Hebta, and others in the Catholic community that reached out to local and state government asking for similar support. This is a place
where I would, this is time for grieving. This is a horrible situation. But at some point, I would like to see leaders in all the churches, not only the Archbishop, but all the churches, do exactly as Nathan had done to King David. Thou art the man. You are the one who did nothing. And what are you going to do now? That has to be... this is a serious issue. The second thing I think they were deflecting from is that this was a trans person, and they didn't want to, there are links between the trans person that killed children in a school in Tennessee and a couple other situations. I think a question has to be asked about how, of course, not all trans people are going to do this. That no one is. I hope no one is saying that. That's just not true. But there are certain disturbances going on in the minds of a group that we now have to say, what's happening here? What is the role of the hormonal treatments? These are important questions. We know that children transitioning into natural puberty have increases of their sexual hormones, and it changes their behavior. Any parent who's raised teenagers recognizes it. Women going through menopausal change of life also have changes in their hormones. It affects their moods in a variety of ways. There's no one way that any adolescent or any menopausal woman reacts to the hormonal changes. Mm-hmm. But these are real. And how does that affect certain people? Are there certain things that should be examined in regard to the psychological stability of the persons? And then I think, too, at Sandy Hook, the man shot up a school where his mother worked, and that was the case here, too. What else is going on with family stability and background? These are questions, that need to be approached. And I think that this attack on religious people for praying is also a deflection from raising those questions. This has to be examined. That's what I would say. And by serious professionals, not ideologues.
Well, I have a statement, I looked it up while you were talking, Father, from the Michigan Catholic Conference. More than 2 years ago, the Michigan Catholic Conference sent a letter to Governor Tim Walz requesting that non-public
Minnesota?
schools...
Minnesota Catholic.
Minnesota. I'm sorry, Minnesota Catholic. Thank you. Yeah. I said Michigan. Minnesota Catholic Conference sending a letter to Governor Tim Walz requesting that non-public schools be included in and allowed to access funding from this funding from the Safe Schools program. But as a Catholic news agency reported, the related bills fizzled in the state legislature, meaning non-public schools remained frozen out of additional funding. And you didn't hear anything about that last week, except on our channels and outlets.
And this is something that all the religious leaders in Minnesota need to say then, not only to Governor Tim Walz, but also to the whole legislature. You are the man. You are the legislators. And this is on you for doing nothing. Don't criticize our prayer. Now, I don't think Governor Walz had made that statement, but the mayor certainly did. Mm-hmm. Instead of looking to the legislature and the governor for, what did we do wrong here?
And the mayor was also more concerned at the time, right after the shooting, when he made those same comments about prayer, he was more concerned about the impact on the trans community.
Exactly. That's why I said that it was a double diversion away from their failure to protect their own citizens, which is a pattern. As we saw back in 2020 in Minnesota, in Minneapolis in particular, as well as, their focus not on the dealing with a real problem of psychological unbalance in certain individuals that makes them suicidal and, in this case, also murderous.
Yeah. More with Father Mitch Pacwa in our Cultural Connections, and we'll shift gears a bit to talk about something very positive that's happening on Sunday, the canonizations of Carlo Acutis and Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. We'll be right back. Thursday, September 4th. Hope it's going well for you. We're so happy you're listening to EWTN Global Catholic Radio, and in particular at this time, EWTN's Catholic Connection with yours truly, CC with TT, Teresa Tommy. Always great to have our friend, Father Mitch Pacwa, the one, the only from EWTN, on with us this morning. And Father, we pray for the soul of that man who is guilty of the shootings, who ended up killing himself last week.
Right.
The whole thing was just such a nightmare.
I feel so badly for him, for his parents. Mm-hmm. This was a tormented soul. There's no doubt. Mm-hmm. There's no room for us to have hatred for him. Mm. But we also have to use good sense to say, look, we cannot have this kind of deal with, these problems of, their own psychological and emotional needs.
I think, too, if we look toward great examples of youth, such as Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis, certainly they can be inspiration, especially for young people that may be struggling. And it's so exciting to see the canonizations finally happening. We've been talking about it all year long in the Jubilee year, and they just wrapped up the Jubilee of Youth. It's very, very exciting, Father. What are your thoughts as we move into this weekend?
A couple of things that and again, that are related. One of them is, it hit me just recently that when I was asked to pray, a salesman was at my door, but he told me about a friend of his when he found out I was a priest, who is 19 and just found out he has a very short life expectancy because of some physical disorders, that they can't treat. That brings up a question that occurs with both of these young saints from the 20th century and now the 21st century with Carlo Acutis. That does youth and does death in youth mean that life is futile? No. This is saying that even exactly as in the book, The Wisdom of Solomon in the Old Testament, where it talks there in chapters 2 and 3, especially chapter 3, about a young person dying, and that their meaning in life is in the way they live a righteous life for God, and that there is an eternal life after this. This is a wonderful teaching when a lot of people emphasize that youth is for foolishness. You're only young once. Therefore, you ought to be free to commit the various sins we now approve for youth. And, living, especially they encourage, experimenting with a variety of pleasures in life. And that if you die too soon, that is something that will harm you. Well, that's just not the case. That's not the case. That it should be that you can live a life that is not only good for you by being virtuous, by seeking what is good and holy and righteous in your youth, and developing all of your abilities. Youth is not a time to waste your energy on simply going out and getting the sin out of you, usually the sexual sin, or sometimes drug use and drinking, but various kinds of mischief. It's rather a time to learn to bring self-control and development of your gifts, whether they're intellectual, physical, and so on, and bring that kind of discipline that is for the sake of other people, and to learn not that youth is about self-indulgence, but it's about self-giving. That's exactly what you see with Pier Giorgio, that he was doing all kinds of tremendous work with the poor as well as with his peers, and doing things that were fun, like mountain climbing and such, but praying a lot, and in prayer finding himself motivated to help the poor. Whereas Carlo Acutis, dealt with this new media. I mean, he still played. He liked video games and such, and he would play, but he also was disciplined and did this research and this website on the Eucharistic miracles to call people to deeper devotion. And I've seen people make physical displays, not the virtual ones on the computer, but they imitated his work some years ago, made these a room full of display. And people, as they learned about Eucharistic miracles around the world and throughout history, they all of a sudden, wow, this is really important. And as a very young man, he also had a big impact to encourage faith in the presence of our Lord Jesus in the Holy Sacrament, that at a time when this was waning, partly because of theologians and clergy and religious not teaching or even teaching falsely about the Eucharist, he gave a type of reality that helped build up faith. This is a generous self-gift that had an impact around the world, because I saw these displays at conferences in a wide variety of states, from here in South Alabama all the way to Texas and other places. This is a powerful use of youth. And, as an older guy, I don't always find myself compatible with computers. I agree with Howard's mother in the Big Bang Theory. I don't even know how to mess with these Verkakta computers. But he, as a young people, had a certain understanding and an ease with it that I don't, and used it for the glory of God. And this counteracts the way so many people have used the computer for horrible things, not only the pornography industry and promotion of violence at times and lies and deception, but human trafficking and all kinds of things. He brought the light of Christ and gave a model for other young people and for us older folks to learn from. This is a wonderful gift. And in that, I can say to this young man who was given a very early death sentence, I mean, he has a couple more years to live, probably, but to say this doesn't mean that you're going to find meaning in life by going out and trying any sin you want, but rather seek the righteousness and virtue and self-giving of these two young saints and find meaning.
Amen. And we're going to have great coverage. We already are having great coverage, of course, on our various outlets, especially this weekend. And for all the details, EWTN.com. And then Doug Keck will be checking with us tomorrow for more. Thanks, Father.
All right. God bless.
You too. Catholic Connection on a Thursday. It is September 4th, 2025. Great to catch up with artist and sculptor Timothy Paul Schmalz. You can check out his gorgeous website at Timothy Paul Schmalz. That's SCHMALZ, TimothyPaulSchmalz.com. Timothy, great to have you on the program. I know we've met before in person at a few events. Your work is fantastic, and I've been following closely given the upcoming canonization of Carlo Acutis, and of course on Sunday, Pier Giorgio Frassati as well. Your beautiful work and the statues, and you have now 3 in total of Carlo, correct? Thanks for joining us.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Yes, I've created already 3 sculptures of Carlo Acutis, which is very exciting. All of them different, but essentially with the same spirit.
Now, I noticed there was one that was also just revealed, I believe it was in the middle of August, and that's already in Assisi, correct?
It is, yeah. It's I think probably my favorite one because it's so big. It's like 11 feet. There's the crucified Christ on a cross, and then you have Carlo Acutis leaning his head on the cross, and in his one hand he's presenting to the world a laptop that is really kind of symbolic of his embracing technology and using it to evangelize. And that piece was installed, just a couple of weeks ago. And what a location for it. It's right near his tomb. And what you can't see in the photo is right behind it, you have one of the most beautiful landscape views of the surrounding area. And that's Assisi. It's just so magnificent. And each corner you take in Assisi, you see something beautiful. And to have this sculpture of Carlo Acutis right there in the center of Assisi is just so symbolic and meaningful.
So that one is already there. It was unveiled, as you mentioned, last month. There's another one that's going to be unveiled as well in Assisi, correct?
Yes, and that was requested by Archbishop Sorrentino. The piece that's already installed is rather large, a life-size Christ, a life-size Carlo. He wanted to put another sculpture of Carlo Acutis on the other side of the tomb, where there is a historical sculpture of St. Francis of Assisi that's already, it's been there probably more than a century. And so he wanted something that was more simple, of just the saint or the Blessed Carlo Acutis standing. And so what I decided to do was have him holding the monstrance. And he's in his casual clothing, and in his sunglasses, you can see the reflection
the sunglasses
of
are
Mary.
amazing. Tell the people about the sunglasses. That is so cool. That is so cool. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to put as much as possible in this, and I wanted to share his love and his devotion to Mary. And so I couldn't sculpt another life-size Mary, but what I did do, in his sunglasses that are dangling from his shirt, I have the reflection, as if they're mirrored sunglasses, of Mary, a portrait of Mary within it. Very, very small. You have to really look to see it. But it's interesting because, I've been sculpting all my life saints, and to have a new saint like this that captures the spirit of the youth is just absolutely phenomenal. In fact, the piece that's already installed, the large version, it was airshipped to the Vatican because the canonization was going to happen during the Jubilee of the Youth. And unfortunately, the funeral happened, so everything was suspended. So the Vatican trucked it up to its final location in Assisi. But that day, I was there. The amount of young people that surrounded, just swarmed Rome. Like, I've been to Rome many times, but it just looked completely different, with thousands upon thousands of young people there for the canonization of Carlo Acutis. And it really makes me think that there's kind of this myth that the church is only something that appeals to older people. And I think that here you have Carlo Acutis, who is that symbol of the youth that are embracing the church today. And so it's refreshing having this new piece there. And, you go to Assisi, and it looks like a museum of history. But now to have this new saint being placed there, it adds to the truth about our Catholic faith, that it is growing. And it is not just a museum, although it has the greatest, richest history. It's moving forward. It's always moving forward.
Yeah, amen to that. Talking with artist and sculptor Timothy Paul Schmalz, and the website, check out his beautiful work, timothypaulschmalz.com, and Schmalz is spelled Schmalz. So, Tim, what I love about your work is, again, that it's so realistic, it's so uplifting. I mean, you have works all over the place, especially the Vatican, and you do a special pilgrim's perspective, connecting pilgrims you have on your website, which is in Rome, which is just a great idea. I was looking at that. But what is it like for you to know that so many people, not only at the Jubilee of Youth and the whole situation this year for the Jubilee year, but from now until, God willing, centuries and centuries, people will be walking through St. Peter's, or, for example, another one of your sculptures or going through, the Church of St. Mary Major in Assisi and seeing your work that's depicting this amazing soon-to-be young saint. What is it like for you to think about and ponder and pray about?
Well, I think it's just a big responsibility. I think that after my first sculpture was installed in St. Peter's Square, I didn't take one day off. I went right back in my studio and started working on a sculpture on St. Paquita on the theme of human trafficking. And so, it's a huge responsibility that I feel, a huge responsibility, because, and I think Carlo Acutis would agree, that our mainstream culture is like what Pope John Paul II said. It's a culture of death, and you see it all around. And I think that the best way to fight this negative culture, this culture war, is by using culture, and that is by using artwork. I consider these pieces visual ambassadors of the good, of our faith. And it's, as Carlo Acutis would say, we're being swarmed with this, inundated with this media, with this culture, that is trying to pull people away from anything that has meaning. And so what I do most of the time is, as I'm sculpting, I'm thinking, what would an 18-year-old think of if they saw my sculpture? My favorite saint is St. Padre Pio, and I've done several different sculptures of him too. One of them that I love is him strangling and punching out a demon. I love Padre Pio, but someone who does not know who this saint is, if they approach this sculpture, they're going to be excited. And I really do believe that our faith is shocking, it's exciting, it's powerful, and I have to represent it such a way that people understand that truth. And oftentimes it's not. And so I think the real battle is what the mainstream media, how they want to perceive Christianity, Catholicism. It's cookies and cream. It's Mary had a little lamb. It's something that's not relevant to us today. That's crap. And my job is to bring that truth out, is to be as authentic as possible, to show people through artwork the value and truth of our faith, really.
So at what point, in let's say when you were first starting to sculpt, you're obviously extremely gifted and you have such great experience and very prominent now in the world of sculpting and art, and very well known, especially in Catholic circles and beyond as well. But when did you decide, okay, I have to really express the faith? Because what you said is so crucial. I think we can win people over by beauty, and you're a huge part of that. Bishop Barron talks about that in his series Catholicism. That's why my husband and I lead pilgrimages all the time, because we see the response of people when they look at a piece of art and they realize, well, okay, who was behind this and who was behind the person behind the sculptor, because somebody had to give someone like you this gift, because you don't just wake up one day. I mean, it's instilled in you, but you have to develop it and you have to react to it. So at what point did you decide, I am going to be expressing our faith through art, as opposed to, because you probably could make $1 gazillion in the secular world?
Well, that happened when I dropped out of art college, and I went through, first of all, an artistic crisis, and then I would say an artistic conversion. I was baptized Catholic. I had a massive conversion experience when I was 17, but that was over there. That was in the closet, right? And I would continue to, in my teens, continue to do the abstract artwork, trying to just shock people with unique materials, unique ideas. And I thought, this is just full of sound and theory, but it's signifying nothing.
Signifying nothing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I thought that, I looked at the great masters, and I that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with sculpture. Bernini, Michelangelo, these great pieces. And then the truth came out that in order to have an epic piece of artwork, you need an epic subject matter. And if you look at someone like Michelangelo, 99% of his artwork, like all the great masters, were expressing spiritual, religious ideas. And that's what made it powerful. It's not the brush strokes. It's not the skill of polishing the marble. It's the essence of it. And this is exactly antithetic to what the art schools are teaching right now. They're trying to say, develop a style, develop something really unique and distinct. Or I thought, forget about the style. I don't want people to even see the style. I want them to see the subject matter. I want them to see what I'm representing. Almost like your artwork is a veil, and if that veil is very thin, you will be able to perceive what's behind that veil. And if you're dealing with eternal truths, if you're dealing with these amazing saints, if you're dealing with the Gospels, you want that to shine out. And the artwork is just an instrument to bring that forth. And so years, decades, I've been working on trying to penetrate as authentically as possible Scripture, the lives of the saints, and to bring people to that message. Artwork is a form of communication. It's just a tool. And in a sense, I'm just an instrument of that to bring that forth. And sculpture is phenomenal, because what it is it's omnipresent. If I put a sculpture out there, it's going to be there preaching, in a sense, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for centuries to come. Whereas the film industry, and you have a lot of great Christian films coming out right now, but the problem is they get buried with the next one. and it requires like 2 hours to sit down in a dark room and watch them. The great thing about sculpture is it's out there in the public. It's out there, and it requires little to enter it. It's a gateway that you can easily access. So yeah, I think the heritage of sculpture within the Catholic Church, which started at the beginning, is an amazing tool. It's an amazing way to create this promotion, tell these stories. You know, it's interesting because in the Middle Ages and prior, a lot of visual artwork was used because people were literally illiterate.
Right, it was to teach because they didn't have Bibles and they were illiterate. Right, exactly.
But nowadays, people are illiterate because they don't have the time, or because they're bombarded by crap on their phone and busyness of their work, and so almost like it's become used again. It's almost a rebirth of artwork because for our time right now, it is that great way of evangelizing.
Amen. Well, we're so glad that you chose to do this because you are allowing yourself to be a witness and a tool, and your work is phenomenal. And you can check out all the beautiful work of Timothy Schmalz on his website, timothypaulschmalz.com. And again, if you are heading to Assisi, you can't miss his work, and also at the Vatican. But again, more information, timothypaulschmalz.com. He has an event coming up in Orlando. Check it out. It's on the homepage. We have to have you back on because I could talk to you forever because there's so many other questions I had that we didn't get to. So we'll reschedule another interview because I do want to talk to you after the canonizations. I want to see what people's reactions are to those statues, especially of Carlo. We'll be right back to let you know what's coming up in the second hour of Catholic Connection. Stay tuned. I was just telling my producer Richard during the break, I cannot wait for me and Deacon Dom to get over to Assisi. Hopefully we're going to get over there tomorrow. It's about 30 minutes from where we reside part-time here in Italy. And the way they have the whole tomb and where you go to pay your respects to Carlo is so beautifully organized in the Church of the Renunciation and St. Mary Major in Assisi. I just cannot wait to see where these statues are, how they're displayed, and with the backdrop, as he said, of the beautiful piazza there. It's such a pretty, pretty little town. Coming up next on our EWTN Radio Extra Hour, our 2 cent segment, we'll take a look at the gospel for today with St. Peter, and also a beautiful reflection in Magnificat that I would like to share with you. And then we're going to talk to Tom Sullivan from Women of Grace. We're going to be talking about rosaries, praying, and being a warrior for the Lord. He's going to be on Women of Grace later in the month. I do want to remind folks that today the Good News Cruise 2007 is being launched. This is a great way to register now and early because it is going to sell out. John Hale, the president of Corporate Travel, shot me an email this morning and said they already have several hundred people registered. And 2026, it's sold out, and we have 800 people on a waiting list. I'm not kidding. I just said we should get like a big tugboat and just bring everybody else along. Why not? Another ship right behind us. But anyway, we can't do that. But we can let you know about 2027. So check it out, goodnewscruise.com. And one of the highlights will be the Catholic vocalist. He is Catholic. It's his faith. He's a very strong Catholic. His name is Harry Connick Jr. He's going to be joining us for the 2027 cruise, along with a number of wonderful hosts and speakers. And we'll be doing, God willing, Catholic Connection live there as well, along with a live show from the cruise in 2026. More Catholic Connection coming your way on a Thursday morning on EWTN Radio Extra. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Happy Thursday. It's Thursday, September 4th, hour number 2 of CC with TT, Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, and we have another great hour, folks, lined up for you. We are going to take a look at the gospel for today, which I just love, where Jesus says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So how's your fishing expedition going? Are you reeling them in for the Lord? We'll discuss Peter and his humility and how that made a difference. We'll talk about that in 2 cents, plus this beautiful reflection from a sister I had never heard about. I'll share it, and that's coming up, plus my own thoughts. And then at the bottom of the hour, so excited to have Tom Sullivan with us from Women of Grace. He's fantastic. He's going to be on the show later this month with Johnette. We'll get all the dates and the times and whatnot. We're going to talk about the importance of praying the rosary, but not just any rosary, the Warrior Rosary, which is actually developed by Tom. And I've seen it, I have my own, and it's powerful, let me tell you. So we'll discuss and why we need to see ourselves in a good and very positive way as warriors for the Lord and the one holy Catholic and apostolic faith. So that is the rundown for today on a Thursday. Just another reminder, as I mentioned as we wrapped up the first hour of the program today, we're also seeing openings for the cruise, Good News Cruise 2027. 2026 has been sold out for a very long time, and our friends at Corporate Travel are telling us that they're on their way to selling out this one as well. So quickly, if you're interested, you do need to go to goodnewscruise.com. It's being launched, pun intended, today in terms of being able to register. We had Father Joe Krupp, our MC, who is, I think he's worth the price of admission. He is so funny, so smart, but so funny. But he was on with me 2 weeks ago, and at that point, they had put out emails to previous passengers on the previous Good News cruises, giving them, first crack at it, and they had a huge response. So they're well on their way to selling out this ship. Now, we do a full ship. The first few years we did this, we were part of Royal Caribbean, and so we had about 800 people, then we had 1,000. Last year, I think we had something like 1,500. Well, this year, we're going to be on Holland America's Eurodam, and the ship is sold out. So the whole ship is a Catholic ship. It's going to be the largest Catholic conga line ever. I think the second largest was the conga line at the rehearsal dinner after for Jeanette and Jack. I'm telling you, it was so funny. We all did and I know Tom remembers this. We did the conga line because it was at his house. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, I digress. But check it out, goodnewscruise.com. It's going to be a blast. And Harry Connick Jr., who is Catholic and loves his faith, is going to be one of the entertainers for that trip in 2027. So just wanted to throw that out there. All right, let's take a look at the forecast. We've got heat in one part of the country and tropical rainfall in another part of the country. So here we go. A significant late season heat wave continuing in the interior Pacific Northwest for at least one more day before easing somewhat Friday into Saturday. A combination of monsoon-type moisture and tropical moisture. This is ahead of a tropical cyclone that will bring a marginal to slight risk of excessive rainfall across the Southwest, and this will take place all the way through Saturday, and that means if you're in that area, you could actually see some flooding. So that's the forecast for today and the weekend. We do hope you're having a great Thursday morning so far, September 4th, getting closer and closer to the canonizations, which are coming up this Sunday, and EWTN will be there. Well, they're there already doing some great stories. So check out all of our news outlets, Catholic News Agency, The Register, EWTN News in Depth, EWTN News Nightly, Raymond Arroyo's program, of course. All great coverage coming up, plus special programming. And Doug Keck will be along tomorrow in the first hour of the program with our Inside Word to give us all the details. Right now, at 4 minutes past the hour, we do need to check the news here on a Thursday on EWTN Radio Extra. It is Catechesis at the Wednesday General Audience, the Holy Father focusing on the Lord's final words on the cross. I thirst, and it is finished, according to the Gospel of John. As he was on the cross and humanity faced our most luminous yet dark moment, noted the Pope, Jesus spoke those sentences filled with an entire lifetime, which reveal, he said, the entire existence of the Son of God. Jesus appears on the cross as a supplicant for love, not as a victorious hero, the Pope said, humbly asking for what he alone cannot give to himself in any way. The Pope pointing out that Jesus' thirst on the cross was not only the physiological need of a tortured body, but also an expression of a profound desire, that of love, of relationship, and that of communion. Vice President Vance finished with his visit to Minneapolis yesterday. He traveled there Wednesday, 1 week after the mass shooting at Annunciation Catholic Church and the school, visiting the site and meeting with parents of the victims.
A lot of things have happened to me since I've become the Vice President of the United States. I have never had a day that will stay with me like this day did, because I really felt like these parents, in the midst of the worst grief of their entire lives, they opened up their lives and they opened up their hearts and they made me part of it.
Vance said the trip served as a reminder to be the best father he could be.
One of the ways that I'm going to try to honor these parents and the children that they lost is by being a better dad and hugging my kids tight tonight and making sure that they know that their dad loves them.
Vance and his wife Usha laying flowers near the front steps of the church and pausing to read messages written in chalk on the pavement. He also met in private with some victims' family members. The New York Post is reporting deranged Minneapolis gunman. Meanwhile, Robert Westman blamed his mother for the decision to kill so many people at a Catholic school after she warned him that he would regret transitioning to female. Well, in the next line of his manifesto, he also discouraged people from letting their kids change gender. In his disturbed manifesto, Westman, 23, claimed to be anxious about a visit from his mom in an entry dated on July 1st, where he recalled her concerns about him transitioning. In that manifesto, he also appeared to blame transitioning and smoking marijuana for his violence. He said, "I wish I never tried experimenting with either." He did work for a marijuana dispensary earlier this year, but was not working there when he carried out the August 27th attack a week ago. And families of the victims of a 2023 mass shooting over in Maine, as well as survivors, are now filing a negligence lawsuit against the U.S. government. At a news conference Wednesday, attorney for the families, Ben Gideon, saying the government failed to act on warning signs shown by Army reservist Robert Card before he killed 18 people in a shooting spree.
The Army knew that Robert Card, the shooter, was suffering from severe mental health crises and had violent ideations.
The shooting setting off a 2-day manhunt ending when Card died by suicide. Now, approximately 100 plaintiffs allege the military, the Biden administration's Department of Defense, and others in the government 2 years ago failed to respond to warning signs and a threat by the gunman. The lawsuit seeks monetary damages for pain and suffering, medical and funeral expenses, emotional distress, and more. Mark Mayfield tells us Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Trump administration will continue targeting vessels believed to be carrying drugs to the U.S.
At a press conference in Mexico City Wednesday, Rubio spoke about the recent strike on a boat in the Caribbean Sea that reportedly killed 11 people, saying it'll happen again. Rubio said the president opted not to stop the vessel and instead ordered it to be destroyed because it posed an immediate threat to the U.S. Rubio was in the Mexican capital Wednesday to meet with the country's president, Claudia Sheinbaum. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Louisiana's Governor Jeff Landry says he does want National Guard members to be sent to New Orleans as a way to crack down on crime in his state. President Trump is open to the idea, telling reporters in the Oval Office yesterday that it would take about 2 weeks and would be easier than Washington, D.C. New Orleans City Council President J.P. Morrell called the idea ridiculous. The council's vice president said it was a scare tactic. Illegal immigrants, meanwhile, are going to be housed at Louisiana's largest maximum security prison in Angola. The section will be dubbed Camp 47 after President Trump, whose administration has been expanding the number of ICE raids. The detainees who are expected to be housed there are described as the worst of the worst criminal illegal immigrants. And President Trump thinks the U.S. should avoid a government shutdown and will avoid a government shutdown. The annual spending battle is now underway in Congress to avoid a shutdown on September 30th. Speaking from the Oval Office yesterday, the president saying he's confident all the Republicans will vote yes on at least a temporary spending bill while the larger budget gets worked out.
I think the Republicans will vote for an extension. We won't have any Democrat votes.
The president went on to say, in his opinion, the Democrats will never support any measure of his, no matter how it may help Americans.
We could give the greatest budget ever. Tax cut of 50%, everybody taken care of, perfect for women, perfect for men, perfect for minorities, perfect for everything, and we wouldn't get one vote for the Democrats because they've lost their mind. They are so deranged. They have Trump derangement syndrome.
The governor of Illinois is saying the president is planning to send Texas National Guard troops to Chicago. Senator John Cornyn of Texas was asked about the decision.
If it's necessary, I support the National Guard assisting local law enforcement.
But now there are some questions about whether this will actually happen. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker would not say where and when he received the tip, and a spokesperson for the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, says there's no current plans to send Texas troops to another state. Chris Carrasco tells us one of President Trump's potential picks to chair the central bank is calling for interest rate cuts.
During an interview, Christopher Waller raised concerns about how quickly the weakening job market could fall apart if the Fed doesn't cut rates at its upcoming September policy meeting. Waller, who was appointed to the Fed by Trump during his first term, is among roughly a dozen potential candidates to succeed current Chairman Jerome Powell. Waller won points with Trump and his top advisors as he has been less concerned about the threat of tariff-driven inflation. I'm Chris Coraggio.
President Trump is asking the high court to quickly hear an appeal on his tariffs after a low court ruled that most of them are illegal. The federal appeals court ruling last week that the president had exceeded his authority, imposing steep levies on nearly every country. According to the filings, Trump is asking the Supreme Court justices to hear arguments on the case in early November. The lower court's ruling allowed the tariffs to remain in effect until at least October 14th. And wildfires linked to lightning strikes are rapidly spreading across Northern California. So far, over 10,000 strikes were recorded.
Have that go bag. Have your pets' leashes and collars near the door. Have your crates ready. Have your documentation. It's so important, and it's really easy to do.
That's Kimberly Nealon, who says she's been evacuated from her own home. One fire is threatening homes in an historic area of Chinese Camp. Another is prompting evacuations in the Sierra foothills and several other areas. And the lightning complex, which they're calling it, they've combined several fires into one complex, which has burned over 12,000 acres. While immediate lightning threat has lessened, the risk of new fires from previous strikes remains. CAL FIRE officials warning fires can start suddenly or even weeks later, especially in forested areas. More than 30 fires are active now in California. Larry Kofsky tells us victims of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein are speaking out as the first batch of documents related to the case have been released.
Speaking on Capitol Hill, survivors, including Lisa Phillips, said they know the names of those who were regulars in Epstein's world.
Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names.
The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee gave the okay for 33,000 pages of information related to Epstein to be made public, and President Trump thinks that's enough.
Because I think we should talk about the greatness of our country and the success that we're having.
The documents include video from the area outside Epstein's jail cell in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York prior to his suicide in 2019. I'm Larry Kofsky, NBC News Radio.
A federal judge in Texas today will consider whether to accept a new plea agreement that would allow Boeing to avoid prosecution over two deadly crashes involving its 737 MAX jetliner. Tom Costello tells us a judge rejected an earlier plea deal last year.
Now the new Trump DOJ plea agreement drops the felony charge, but Boeing would pay $1.1 billion in fines and compensation to victims' families. The Justice Department says 110 family members approve of the deal.
But many of those families still want to see Boeing face criminal prosecution. That's the news on a Thursday. We'll be right back to begin our discussion here on EWTN Radio Extra. Hope you're having a beautiful Thursday. It's September 4th, 2025. This is the second hour of EWTN's Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio Extra. And at this time of the day, we do something called T's 2 cents. So I share what's on my heart and some thoughts and what's going on in the world, or maybe what the reading has to give us today. And that's where we're going to begin our 2 cents segment and end it this morning with the gospel for today on Thursday, September 4th, from the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 5. It's all about being fishers of men. While the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw two boats there alongside the lake. The fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we have worked hard all night and having caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets." And when they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and filled both boats so that the boats were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of fish they had made seized him, and all those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. All right, this is such an incredible gospel. There's so much in this and so much to unpack, but I really want to share with you, with that in mind, this beautiful reflection from the Magnificat today. And I don't even know who this beautiful woman is, not familiar with her name, but her name is Sister Mary David Toda, and she passed away in 2017. She was born and raised in the U.S. and later became a Benedictine nun at St. Cecilia's Abbey on the Isle of Wight in England. So I thought that was really interesting. So here's what she had to say about this gospel and about submission to the Lord. Trusting in the word of the Master. We need to trust providence. If you are moving in a particular direction, trust that God will lead you to know if it is the right one. When one has done all that one can reasonably do, instead of continuing to wonder endlessly that one should do, one needs to say to the Lord, "It seems to me that after all the praying, discussing, and discerning, you are calling me in this direction. That's a direction I am going to take." Put out into the deep. Peter starts to reason, weighing up pros and cons. After all, he might look foolish. He wants to be sure things will work out in a particular way before he will do something. But ultimately, he has to step aside from his own view of reality and accept the Lord's reality, which expands and liberates. Sister goes on to say, making a decision and sticking by it in difficult times is the very heart of the matter. And this involves building up a rich pattern of supernatural motivation, which has to become your very own. Openness to every possibility is, as you recognize, truly perilous. To have an endless series of options is really to have no options, because you never embrace any one of them with your whole heart. You postpone really giving yourself, which is ultimately the source of all happiness. God invites us to build a concrete life rather than to fantasize about innumerable possible lives. This security, she says, comes not from mapping out the whole ground of the future, nor is it given by the rejection of all risk. It arises from an inner sense of purpose. It's a security that springs from a greater love, the security of faith. By saying yes to God, we relinquish a certain control over our lives. But then our lives become ours in a new way. And is control such a good thing? Keeping options open, keeping things indeterminate, is inevitably to base everything on ourselves, our efforts, our success. And when these fail, we panic. This leads to constant flight, turning away from God, narrowing down, inflexibility, withdrawing into self. Basing our lives on God leads to greater selflessness, availability, fruitfulness, freedom, and surrender into the only hands that can truly lift us up to Him. Yes, the end is a leap. We cannot have God cheaply. We must give our all. Isn't that beautiful? And again, the author of that is Sister Mary David Toda. She passed away in 2017, born and raised in the U.S., and becomes a Benedictine nun and lived the rest of her life in England on the Isle of Wight. There's so much about what she says about being like Peter, putting out into the deep as Jesus requested he do, and he did follow. And even if you read between the lines, this reminded me also, if you remember, a few weeks ago, we had my friend Steve Ray back on Catholic Connection, and he has a different take on who Peter was. He did some research, and some of it is from this particular gospel, that Peter wasn't this dumb fisherman and didn't know what he was doing. He was a very successful businessman. He ran a very successful business, fishing business, along the seashore of Galilee. And you can take that from this gospel. Master, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets. When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat. So Peter had partners. That means he was in a big business. And yet that very day, after seeing and experiencing the miracle of all of these fish jumping into the nets and eventually being piled on into the boats to the point where they were almost sinking, he realized with whom he was dealing. And he realized the power of God and that he had to submit to that power in order to be truly happy and to make a difference. He says, the gospel says, when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of the fish they had seized them, and all of those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon's. So you can tell from this gospel that Peter was, again, a very successful businessman. He knew what he was doing, and he wanted things, as the sister said in the reflection, to be a particular way. But then he realized that he had to go in another direction and follow the Lord. And he does that. But he first expresses humility. He falls to his knees and says to the Lord, "Leave me behind. I'm a mess. I'm a sinful man." But Jesus says, "No, that's okay. Don't worry about it, because from now on, you will be fishers of men." Again, there's so much to glean from this gospel. And I think the biggest point is the point of humility. Despite the success of Peter, despite the fact that he had a pretty good business going, he still wanted to follow the Lord, but he was kind of wavering back and forth and not really sure. And at this point in his life, he makes a super commitment. Now, obviously, he stumbles a little bit later on in the Gospels, as we see. But at the end of the day, it's this idea of taking that leap of faith. Mother Angelica would always say, faith is 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot in the air, and a queasy feeling in the stomach. And I love the point that Sister makes, where having so many choices and thinking, oh, I have so many opportunities, but spending your life looking at all these different opportunities and never making a decision is like doing nothing. For the ladies out there, and I know my sister Jeanette can relate to this, how many of us have stood in front of our closet, and all of us, myself included, probably have way too many clothes or shoes or purses, and we cannot make up our minds what to wear because there's just so much stuff. And sometimes you can feel paralyzed by that. And so the best thing to do, what do? You remove a lot of the things from your closet that you really don't need. Maybe give it to the poor, whatever you can do, someone who needs it, maybe in your family or a friend. And then you can look and then you can say, okay, now what can I wear? What can I do here with what I have? But the biggest thing we have to do with everything in our lives, if we're going to make a difference and if we're truly going to be happy, is to do what Peter did, to drop down to our knees and recognize who Jesus is and who we are not. At the end of the day, Jesus loves us and wants us to all be fishers of men and women. We'll be right back. Thursday morning, September 4th, here on EWTN Radio Extra, second hour of CC with TT, Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo. Great to catch up with Tom Sullivan, Director of Operations for Women of Grace and creator of the beautiful Warrior Rosary, talking about praying the Rosary as a warrior for Jesus in the church. Tom, great to catch up with you again.
Well, it's good to be with you, Teresa, and it's TT and TS today.
There you go. I love it. That sounds like a lot of fun. Are you going to be on with Jeanette later on in the month? I think
yes.
Richard told me the 29th and the 30th. But take me back to the Warrior Rosary, because you gave me one of them, and I love the Warrior Rosary. It's so beautiful. What led you to develop it?
Well, I never intended to develop it, to be honest with you. Ever since my return to the Catholic Church back in 1989, I was still in the military at that time, I started praying the Rosary. And in 2012, I was praying my Rosary. And by this time, I had learned a lot about the Church's teaching on the Christian life as a warfare and that, prayer is a battle. And so whenever I would pray the Rosary, I would picture myself, in spiritual combat. I'm slaying dragons, and my rosary is my sword in hand. And then I would kind of open my eyes and look at my rosary, and it was elegant. It was just nice, So I was like, I got to have a sword on my crucifix. I need to have, something that's a sword. So I looked around and tried to find just something to put on my rosary. I wanted to find a crucifix in the form of a sword that would continue to remind me that when I'm in prayer with my rosary, that I'm in spiritual combat. And there wasn't anything. So I just thought, well, oh, well, But this thought didn't leave me, and for the next few months as I continued praying the rosary every morning, this idea kept coming back to me about the sword on the crucifix. And then my military background started spilling over, and it was like, Tom, the rosary, it has all these decades, and there are special forces, like small man teams, like Navy SEAL teams, that form these groups of teams that go into battle with you. No soldier goes into battle alone. And all this stuff started coming back, and I started thinking more about the rosary. And the more I prayed, it was like, oh my gosh, I get this. The sword on the crucifix and each of the saints, that were warriors in this life, intercede every decade I enter into. And so I began in my mind pulling this together in my prayer time. And then it was, I was at an EWTN radio conference one year right after that, and I was talking with David Caldillo, and he was showing me his rosary with a centerpiece that he had customized with his company's logo on it. I said, "Oh, that's really cool. Where'd you get that?" And he says, this company Gorelli's, did it for me. I said, "Yeah, I got some ideas for a rosary too." He says, "Well, here's their number. Give them a call." And so I gave them a call and talked with them, and they said, "Do you have any of this on paper?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Would you send it to us?" And I said, "Sure." So when I did, I got a call back within hours, and they were like,
"Really?
Tom, you've got to let us do this with you. We've got to do this. We can make this, we can do this. There's nothing like this anywhere in the world." And I said, "Yeah, I kind of know that. There's not even a cross with a sword on it, So they said, "Let's do this together." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." So for the next 2 years, we kept going back and forth with designs and creations and ideas, and until finally we boiled it all down to what we have now in the Warrior's Rosary, which are all of the medals are in their form of a shield, and they contain the saint that, for that particular one that I've chose for that particular medal, that was a warrior in this life and is now aiding us who are still here on earth, in our battles through intercession and prayer. And so the centerpiece, I decided that I needed to include the sacraments, because in the life of the church, the sacraments are like the big guns, They're the big guns in combat. They're not like our sacramentals, which are our personal weapons in combat, but they're big guns, So I wanted to include in there the reality of the fact that the church teaches us that through baptism we enlist into the service of the king under his standard. A standard is a battle flag, and this was language I understood. And that through confirmation we are strengthened for combat. Well, and this in the early church used to be called the double sacrament, baptism, confirmation, because it's really two sides of the same coin. So on the centerpiece, I designed on the back a woman. At the very top of the centerpiece is Our Lady of Mount Carmel, with Jesus, the child Jesus on her lap, and all these rays of grace are coming down upon a woman representing the church, knighting a knight on his knees, representing you and I through baptism and confirmation, being confirmed, baptized and confirmed into the combat. And on the front, the whole centerpiece is designed as a shield with crossed swords. So all this came together, over a period of about 2 years after I initially wanted just simply a sword crucifix for my own little rosary, And it got so far ahead of me, I couldn't keep up with it. It was crazy. So I knew that it was all our Lord and Our Lady's doing, because I wasn't looking to create anything. I just wanted a sword to go into battle with on my rosary when I was praying every morning.
I think it's important to the way you describe the analogy so much of, especially with your military background, because some people will perceive that as very negative or very odd. Oh, these Catholics, these Christians always talking about spiritual warfare. They really don't understand what we mean by that.
Right. No, this is true. And it really takes a wide lens. You need to go back. I mean, the first war was fought in heaven. All right. Revelation 12 tells us, right? War broke out in heaven. It spills over onto the earth. Michael casts out the devil and his demons, and they're thrown down to the earth. And now God creates Adam and Eve, and now they're his prey. He can't get to God, so now he goes after God's creation, and he goes after those who are in the image and likeness of God, the children of God. And so we see what happens in the Garden of Eden. We see the fall, and from that time on, man has become hostage to the devil, basically, and in need of a redeemer. And so Revelation 12 even tells us that, the devil goes on to wage war against the rest of the woman's offspring. These, in Revelation 12:17, these are those who keep the commandments of God and give testimony to Christ. So spiritual warfare is part of our everyday life, and the Catechism itself, when it refers to battle, more than 25 times, it's in context of prayer. So how appropriate that when we're in prayer, it's a battle. Why? Because the devil does not want us talking to God. He does not want us getting close to God. He doesn't want us meditating on the things that bring grace to us. And so he's constantly trying to distract us in our meditation, in our prayer time, make us too busy for prayer. And I have found that the rosary is the weapon for me. Not only does the church teach that next to the holy sacrifice of the Mass, that the rosary is the next most powerful weapon in prayer.
Well, the other thing, too, how many times do we hear Padre Pio, when we read about him? What did he say? Bring me my weapon.
That's
he meant
right.
the rosary.
Yes, exactly right. It was his weapon, and now too. And Padre Pio, he's on my new rosary. I'm just now coming out with.
We got to talk about that. We'll take a break.
New one.
We'll be
I
right
got.
back,
It's in design.
This is so important, and these rosaries are still available. We'll tell you how to get them. We're chatting with Tom Sullivan, Director of Operations for Women of Grace, of course, with Jeanette Williams, and creator of the Warrior Rosary, and he's working on another rosary right now. He'll tell us about it up next, and he'll also be on Women of Grace later this month. Stay tuned. Past the hour, second hour of Catholic Connection on Thursday, September 4th. Continuing our conversation with Tom Sullivan, Director of Operations for Women of Grace. And, of course, we were talking about him also being the creator of the Warrior Rosary. And now you're working on another one.
Yes. I've had the privilege over the last 2.5 years to work closely with the Archdiocese of Manila Office of Exorcism and the Chief Exorcist of Manila. And I spend a lot of time in the Philippines. I have a lot of outreach work I do over there. And in February, when we returned from the Philippines, Father Sakia came to Tampa, where I live at, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, listen, Tom, we're in town. Could we come by for lunch?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So he came by and we're sitting around talking, and he brought another exorcist with him, Father Ramon. And we're talking around the table, and I was showing him some of the different Warriors Rosaries, that I have. And there was one that I created for a Navy SEAL up in Virginia called the Tactical Edition. And I was showing him that because it's really cool. It's all black and everything. And he says to me, he looks at me and he says, "This is really nice, but why haven't you done an Exorcist edition?" And I was like,
wow.
Whoa, I never thought of it. He says, "Well, I just thought of it." So I looked at him like, "Well, what do you have in mind?" So we started going through the different saints, who he would like to see as the different saints. We talked about the centerpiece. And so I'm sitting here holding the first sample in my hand as I'm talking to you. And it's quite unique, and it's really, I think it's going to be really good. I don't want to do anything with it just yet until I get over to the Philippines. I'm leaving in 2 weeks to meet with him and to let him see the samples, and we kind of finalize it. But I'll tell you what, you've got your EWTN listeners. EWTN has its own Warrior's Rosary. Mm-hmm. It's a blue and white sodalite with all of the saints on it for warfare, representing all the different outreaches of EWTN. If you don't have one, you need to get one, because it is a totally awesome rosary. But this one here that I'm talking about now, with it'll be a paracord edition, and it'll be I'm saying it's a few months down the road before it'll be out. But But my hair just curled when Father said to me, do you have how come you haven't done an Exorcist edition? And I was like, my goodness, I haven't even thought about that. And on this new rosary is Padre Pio and Saint Benedict and Catherine of Siena, Saint Francis of Assisi, Our Lady of the Rosary. So it's really going to be it's lined up with powerful saints.
People don't realize, we were talking about this earlier in the earlier segment about the Warrior Rosary, they don't understand the language that we use. They misconstrue it or don't understand it. But at the same time, we were talking during the break about they poo-poo us, they poo-poo, the spiritual warfare. They say we sound very extremist or whatnot, or, just kind of like, they're a little bit weird, all those things that they think about warfare and spiritual warfare. And yet you see so much violence in the world, right?
Yes.
Every time you turn around, there's violence. You were talking about a film that you watched not too long ago. So there's violence, but there's no warfare. How does that even make any sense? Right?
Yeah, it doesn't. And for the Catholic Christian, spiritual warfare is combating that violence. Now, see, but that doesn't mean we go to battle and we exchange dukes. We enter into prayer. And as I said earlier, the Catechism over 25 times when it refers to battle, it's referring to prayer. And prayer is our weapon of warfare, because you have to realize all of this evil in the world is generated somewhere and influenced by something. I like to use the example when I start talking about the invisible reality that we face in the demonic world. And I use an example of when Jesus was in the boat with the apostles, right? The storm rages, the boat's, crazy, the weather's all nuts, the waves are all out of control, the apostles are afraid, and they wake him up and are like, we're going to die, Jesus, help us. And he looks at them and he says, oh, you of little faith. And he stands up and he commands the wind and the seas to cease. And it immediately comes and becomes, peaceful. And my question is, who do you think he was talking to? Do you think he was talking to the water or the wind? No. He was talking to the demons behind it who were seeking to overturn that boat, to freak out the apostles, to attack them, basically, using the powers in which they were giving at their creation, those creations over the elements of God's creation. And so Jesus wasn't talking to the water or the air. He was talking to the demons behind it, and he told them, knock it off. And they did. And spiritual warfare for us as Catholic Christians is basically the same way. We tap into our baptismal grace that we have as children of God. We enter into spiritual warfare because it's from the beginning. The Church teaches us that, and it's in the Catechism, that from the very beginning of creation, man has been caught up in dour combat. Mm-hmm. Right, and again, it goes, as I said earlier, go back to the war in heaven. The angels spilled out, the demons spilled over onto the earth. Adam and Eve fell. Man became hostage to the devil. Jesus came on board, came among us, and basically, reversed all of that. And if you take a look at even at Christ's agony in the garden. And all that he was going through. You tie that back into the original garden and the original combat and the original Adam, and you see, the anguish that Christ was going through. Mm-hmm. He was experiencing spiritual combat. Only, unlike the first Adam, who submits and participates in the forbidden fruit and then severs his relationship with God, the new Adam submits to the Father and lays his life down and redeems mankind. And we continue in that battle. God, Christ did that so that you and I could do that with him, to join into combat with him in spiritual warfare.
We're talking with Tom Sullivan, Director of Operations for Women of Grace and creator of the Warrior Rosary. He's going to be on Women of Grace with our very own Jeanette Williams later this month, talking about the importance of praying the Rosary and also showing us some of his beautiful rosaries that he's developed, including the Warrior Rosary, and now, of course, the Rosary for, oh my goodness, that is so exciting, the Rosary for exorcists, and so important. Now, is St. John Vianney on there, too?
Yes, he is.
I was going to say, I was thinking, you're naming the saints, and we've got to have St. John Vianney on there.
Yeah, Father Sakia, he's the chief exorcist of Manila. He went down the list, and him and Father Ramon, and they're like, this one. Okay, you got it. I'll make it happen.
When you think about, for example, the reaction last week at that horrible, horrific act at Annunciation, the Catholic school in the parish there, and you think of the reaction from the mayor and from many in the media about, oh, don't talk about prayer. To me, Tom, that's a sign of the presence of evil in the world. When praying is so just abhorrent, they just cannot stand to hear those words.
Right, because that is the solution. Prayer is the retaliation, if you will, or actually, you know, when you're on defense like that, it is the answer to what we're experiencing, what we're seeing. You know, and I know it's not politically correct, but all of this craziness going on in the world, whether it's trans or the acceptance of these, the gay lifestyle to be accepted as normal and all this other stuff. You go back and you discover that there are actually demons connected with this kind of thinking. I remember years ago I read a book called Hostage to the Devil, and there was one case in there where one of the demons' name was Girl Fixer. I mean, this was back in the late 80s, early 90s, you know. And his whole purpose was to convince men that they need to be women and women that they need to be men. And this was back before it was popular, you know. Demons have a particular mission. Some of them have to do with, sexual sins and lust. Some things have to do with violence. Some have to do with just a whole, assortment of the ills that we see among us in our society today and around the world. And this is why prayer is the answer, and why, especially for me and for other Catholics, I think, praying the Rosary, because it is the weapon against these things. And it is our way to answer those attacks and to attempt to neutralize them as well.
So if people are interested in purchasing the rosaries that you developed, Tom, where do they go?
Yeah, they go to EWTNRC.com. They have them there. And Women of Grace also has them at womenofgrace.com, and my website as well, thewarriorsrosary.com. I have a variety of different ones. So I got paracords now. I have regular stainless steel ones. So got a whole host of them.
We have to remember what the great saints have said about the importance of praying the Rosary, the intercession of the Blessed Mother, but also sacramentals. For example, holy water.
Yes.
St. Teresa of Avila talked about the use of holy water, didn't she?
Yes. And this is what I referenced it earlier. The sacraments are the big guns. When you're in combat, you get on the radio, you call for an airstrike or something. Those are the sacraments. Those are the big guns. But you and I are also foot soldiers on the battlefield. And we have our own personal sidearms. We have our own little personal hand grenades or night vision goggles, or our own, hand weapons and field knife and things. These are the sacramentals. These are the tools in warfare and spiritual warfare that you and I have on a daily basis. Our St. Benedict medal, our holy water, our blessed salts, our rosary, our scapular medal. All of these things, I like to refer to the scapular as Mary's dog tags.
It's
exactly
what a great analogy.
Oh, I tell you what, when God called me from the U.S. military to the military in the kingdom, I was stunned at all of the military language throughout church teaching from the beginning to the end, and whether it's in the catechism or whether it's in the councils or whether it's in the fathers of the church, everything is focused around spiritual warfare. Maybe not in that exact term, but it's all about combating evil.
It's so obvious once you start to read Scripture. But see, that's the problem. Most people who are poo-pooing this or saying that we're extremists or they were out of our mind and we're overzealous, they don't know because they haven't read or they haven't even thought about it.
All they have to do is look at the troubles in their own life. And they've got to ask themselves, where's this coming from? Whether it's a child gone astray, if you're a parent, maybe it's drug addiction, maybe it's sex addiction, maybe it's they're just thievery, they're into stealing and things, or maybe they're battling depression. I mean, all of these things can be and should be combated first and foremost in prayer. I mean, I have a number, we don't have time now, but I have a number of personal stories in my own life that in dealing with children, whether they were battling leukemia or whether they were battling drug addiction, that through the prayer of the Rosary and Our Lady has not only got my wife and I through it, but them through it as well, and all the way through it, and came out on the other side. But it's all spiritual warfare, and the devil is not. And even if you don't believe in the devil or spiritual warfare, it's okay because he believes in you. So whether you're not going to do away with the evil and the violence around you just by not acknowledging it or not recognizing it or just thinking, it's not real. It's very much real.
No, it's real. And there are people who actually have had experiences, especially if they're engaging in the occult and whatnot.
Right.
And unfortunately, they find it out the hard way when you
Yes.
mess with things like that. Tom, great to have you on the program.
You
So
too.
excited about the Women of Grace shows. Again, what are the dates of those? And you'll be discussing the Rosary, but
the
also
28th
praying the
and
Rosary in
29th?
general.
No.
29th and 30th.
29th
I
and
think,
30th.
is it?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 29th, 30th.
It's going to be very interesting. And again, you can get those rosaries at the EWTN Religious Catalog. Or what's your website?
TheWarriorsRosary.com.
Great to talk with you again.
You too, Teresa, and thank you again for having me on.
God bless.
God
And
bless
we'll
you.
talk soon. We'll be right back. It is a Thursday. Stay tuned. You really want to jot this down on your calendar, those 2 dates when Tom Sullivan is going to be on with Janet Williams on her beautiful program, Women of Grace, because what he's talking about is so important. And these rosaries are very specific, and they're very important to have in our war chest, our spiritual war chest. There you go. I'm trying to come up with the words again about spiritual warfare. So again, Tom Sullivan, Director of Operations for Women of Grace, will be on Women of Grace later this month, the 29th and the 30th. Now, coming up tomorrow on the program, it's a Friday, so Doug Keck, of course, President Emeritus, he's going to be joining us, and boy, it is going to be a busy 15 minutes with Doug because there's so much I'm sure he has to say about the gavel-to-gavel coverage that we're already providing for the upcoming canonizations this Sunday, live from St. Peter's Square. Carlo Acutis and Pier Giorgio Fossati, with tens of thousands of people scheduled to be there. We'll have gavel-to-gavel coverage, as I said. It will be on the radio. It will be on the internet. It will be on TV. You'll see it on all of our Catholic outlets. Catholic News Agency, the National Catholic Register, EWTN News Nightly, EWTN News In Depth, of course, Raymond Arroyo, the world over. Plus, there's also a number of special programs that will be airing. And then after Doug, we have Fact Check Friday, and we'll wrap up with something to look forward to in addition to our great coverage of the canonizations, the Good News Cruise 2027. John Hale, the president of corporate travel, will be joining us. You can register now. I would do it because it'll sell out. GoodNewsCruise.com. Talk to you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.